Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radhagidhari Ke Srila Prabhupada Ke Jam Vishpad Paramhamsa Prabhajakacharya Sotar Sata Shishimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ke ISKCON founder Acharya Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ke Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ke Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ke Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're getting to hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 29, talks between Narada Muni and King Prachinabarhi, text number 38. Saha Achirat Eva Rajarshe Sochirat Eva Rajarshe Shad Achuta Katashraya Shadachuta Katashraya Shinvataha Shadadhanasya Shinvata Shadadhanasya Nityada Shad Adi Adiyata Nityada Shad Adiyata Sochiradeva Rajarshe Shadachuta Katashraya Srinvata Shradadhanasya Nityadashyadadiyataha Socharadeva Rajarshe Shadachuta Katashraya Shinvata Shadadhanasya Nityadashyadadiyataha Socharadeva Shadachuta Katashraya Socharadesha Arjase Shadachuta Katashraya Shinvata Shadadanasya Nityada Shadadiyataha Socharadeva Rajarshe Shadachuta Katashraya Shinvata Shadadanasya Nityada Shadadiyataha Shadachuta Katashraya Shinvata Shadadanasya Nityada Shadadiyataha Socharadeva Rajarshe Shadachuta Katashraya Shinvata Shadadhanasya Nityada Shadadiyataha Saha that Achirat very soon Eva certainly Raja Rishi O best of kings Shat becomes Achuta of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kata, narrations. Ashraya, depending on. Shinvataha, of one who is hearing. Shadadhanasya, faithful. Nityada, always. Shat, becomes. Adiyataha, by cultivation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. O best of kings, one who is faithful, who is always hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always engaged in the culture of Krishna consciousness, in hearing of the Lord's activities, very soon becomes eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Please repeat. O best of kings. Or I could say, O best of devotees. One who is faithful, who is always hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always engaged in the culture of Krishna consciousness, and in hearing of the Lord's activities, very soon becomes eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Constant engagement in the transcendental loving service of Vasudeva means constantly hearing the glories of the Lord. The principles of Bhakti Yoga: Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Pada Sevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyamatma Nivedanam, are the only means by which perfection can be attained. Simply by hearing of the glories of the Lord, one is elevated to the transcendental position. Could we please pray? Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnanjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shita Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is continuation of yesterday's verses and purports. Basically, it was saying yesterday, unless one renders devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, one cannot possibly become completely detached from this material world, nor can he possibly manifest real knowledge. Now every devotee, certainly our assembly here, want to become completely detached from the material world, and we want to have real transcendental knowledge manifest within the heart. And so in this verse, Narada Muni explains what that devotional service means. Hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and cultivating the technology, the science of Krishna consciousness. And again he repeats, hearing the Lord's activities. If you do that faithfully, then very soon you'll become able to see the Lord face to face. You'll hear the Lord. You'll be able to touch the lotus feet of the Lord. You can render service to the Lord. So, in the purport, he quotes Prahlad Maharaj's verse, the context of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. I think everybody knows that verse. Even I know that verse. But it's two verses actually. Prahlad Maharaj said, hearing, chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming His servant, considering the Lord one's best friend, and surrendering everything unto Him. In other words, serving Him with body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. The second of the 2 verses, one who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge. So the context of these 2 verses is that his father, Hiranyakashipu, asked him, what's the best thing you've learned from your guru, from your teacher? He was expecting to hear something that Sandan Amarka had taught his small little boy. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, yes, it's true, he had 2 gurus, or 2 teachers, seminal Brahmins, gurus, and Narada Muni. He considered the teachings that he received from Amarka and Sananda to be useless. Therefore he was asked, what's the best teaching I've heard, I've learned? And he gave this, the essence of Krishna consciousness, the process of devotional service. These 9 items, 9 ways to serve the Lord. Hearing is the beginning, as we've said before. It's the foundation. The only way you learn anything is through hearing. Those who are abandoned and left in the jungle or this or that and have no one to teach them, to speak to them, they remain as dumb and as ignorant as an animal. They simply absorb in scourging for food, defending themselves, etc. They've found children like that before. Little animals. Now, the best thing to hear, of course, is the transcendental glories of the Lord. His name, His form, His qualities, His associates' glories, the pastimes, etc. So when we talk about hearing, then we have to ask, well, what are we hearing? How are we hearing? From whom are we hearing? And then what do you do with it all? So, of course, it's already stated here, we're hearing the glories of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada in the purport to Shravanam Kirtanam says that the main item, the main way in which hearing is applied is through hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. This is so important. Our Srimad Bhagavatam classes and our personal hearing or reading of Srila Prabhupada's books, Srimad Bhagavatam. And of course others, Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Chaitanya Charitamrita, etc., etc. Those literatures which are exclusively glorifying the Lord. Those are places of pilgrimage for the sadhavas, the sadhus, the swan-like men, the most learned of men. But of course, most people, they don't have that opportunity. Why is that? Because 99.9% of the population of humanity are actually, at best, somewhat religious. But their religious reciprocation with the Lord is based around sense gratification. So everything they hear is more or less based around that. What do I get out of it? Please protect me. Please help me. Please provide for me. And so it's said that there are many thousands of subject matters to be heard, but only this Krishna Katha, Achyuta Katha, is worthy to be heard. It says, Achyuta Katha Ashraya, and the word for word Ashraya was depending on. Well, I'm no Sanskrit scholar, as if that's a shocker, but Ashraya also, at least, is the same word, or it is connected to shelter. So one who takes shelter of Krishna's glories, he is most fortunate. One who has complete faith that by simply hearing or engaging in Krishna's service, then all perfection of life will be achieved. Shraddha Shabdi Vishvasa Kahi Sudrita Nischaya Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Kritahaya. By rendering transcendental loving service to Krishna, one automatically performs all subsidiary activities. This confident, firm faith, favorable to the discharge of devotional service, is called Shraddha. So this is in the area of how do we hear? With Shraddha. But not the normal sense of faith that people think of among the 99.9%. Faith often is sentimental. It's not based on transcendental knowledge. And so you can be a Jewish person growing up. That's how you identify. Your family has, said this is who you are. And then you can become a Christian. Or sometimes a Christian will become a Muslim. Or, Hindus can become Muslims, etc. So this is not real faith, as we just heard defined. When you have implicit faith, Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tagaro tasyaite katitayarta prakashante mahatma. When you have implicit faith, unshakable faith, Dhrida Vrata, in both Guru and Krishna, then transcendental knowledge, the essence of the Bhakti scriptures will be revealed to you. The essence, the import, the techniques of the science of devotional service will be revealed. And as we said, we all would like that. We all aspire for that. And it's only when one has achieved transcendental realization or transcendental knowledge will we become completely detached from this world. There's a big difference between renunciation and detachment. Nyas means to give away, to give up, to run away. Don't touch it. Don't go near it. I should say in preparation into moving down to Dallas to enter into the ashram to beg permission to please accept us, let us move into the temple. We wanted to take shelter of Srila Prabhupada and practice Krishna consciousness. We had so many things. We had a house full of things. And basically because we were sentimental or uneducated in our practice of Krishna consciousness, we had faith, some preliminary faith. We wanted to surrender to Krishna. The sign that was on the temple the first time we visited and got books, not the first book I got, but got more books from the devotees there. The sign had a picture of Arjuna and Krishna, like was on the front of the Bhagavad Gita at that time. And it said, "Are you tired of living in the material world?" We were. We wanted to be free from the miseries of this life. We wanted to surrender to Krishna. So we gave up before moving to the temple. We got hold of our friends, what few were left after we had been simply talking about Krishna for half a year. Tended to separate the folks who really liked me, my real friends, from the folks who were just after something I was offering them. But we gave away most of our stuff, sold a little bit of it. And the point I'm making is we didn't realize that a lot of that could have been used in Krishna's service. We saw it as Maya, that which we were attached to for our sense gratification, and we didn't want to be attached to sense gratification, so we gave it all away. But that's not vivrikt here. That's not detachment. Detachment is based on transcendental knowledge, where you realize there's nothing but Krishna and his energies. When the illusion that separates Krishna from everything is removed from the heart, the mind of the conditioned soul, then we realize that we're Krishna's eternal servant. And what does a servant do? He engages in the service of the Lord. What does he engage? Everything he can. And that's the science, the techniques that the spiritual master and the Vaishnavas teach us. If it's favorable for pleasing Krishna, we'll do anything and everything. Even that which we would have no desire whatsoever previously on our own. And that which we were most attached to, if we're taught that, no, Krishna doesn't want this, doesn't like this, and we give it up. And that mentality of giving up that which we want is where the real challenge lies. I mean, why aren't we pure devotees? We are, to the degree we're following. Srila Prabhupada would sometimes apply this verse, Iha yasya harer dashe karmana manasagira nikalasasi avastasu jivan mukta uchate. This verse that if you're engaged, body, mind, and words in the service of Krishna, you're a liberated soul. And he would say, this applies. Jiva Goswami says that applies in the level of sadhana bhakti right now. We can be pure devotees, rendering pure devotional service if we're doing what we're told and not doing what we're told not to do for the pleasure and service of Krishna. Realization can be, very thin ice, fragile. But if we're following, at that time we are engaged in pure devotional service by the mercy of Guru, disciplic succession, and Lord Chaitanya. Realization will come by doing that. You heard the verse this morning that by having darshan of the deity, all sins can go away. All contaminations fly away. Same way with hearing. One who hears, one who is faithful in hearing, the Lord within the heart, He cleanses all anarthas, all the inauspicious things from the heart. He's simply wanting to do that for us wayward sons and daughters, waiting for us to take it up, and to take it up properly. So we hear. Why is it that the others are not hearing? Because it's a godless age. It's another way of saying it. The symptoms of those in this godless age of quarrel. Prayena, Payusha, Sabya, Katavasmin, Yuge Janaha, Manda Sumanda Matiyo, Manda Bhagya, He Upadrutaha. We all know the verse. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. I mean, didn't we all, when we heard the announcement that Vijay shared with us, was it 2 mornings ago, Mahabharat had skin cancer? Didn't you kind of feel like a little shiver in your... Didn't you kind of like... Yeah, because mortality once again was put in our face. Is he leaving his body? And the fear is there for us, to the degree we're in bodily consciousness. It reminds us that our time is numbered. Our days are numbered. Our time is short. The example of a drop of water tottering on a lotus leaf. Slightest little and it can fall down. The body, it's a miracle. It is so complex. We think that the so-called scientists and medical professionals, etc., have it dialed in, because they know so many things about the complexity of the body, but they're just scraping the surface. It's a miracle. They're hovering in the mental energy, not realizing the soul is the actual patient and the real disease is the ignorance and forgetfulness that I am Krishna's eternal servant. They're part of the fallible soldiers, people who take shelter of the body and their relatives and such authorities. It hinders, it hurts the surrendering process in hearing and receiving the gift of transcendental knowledge through hearing. That's the message of Bhagavatam. Faith means simply, solely engaging in the unalloyed, unmixed service to Guru, Vaishnavas, and Krishna. When His pleasure is the sole object, I desire no profit. My activities are favorable in that I want to please Guru and Krishna. I don't desire sense gratification or mental speculation through fruitive activities or mental speculation. No, I just want to render service. That's pure devotional service. And that covers everything. It certainly covers the bases of eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing. Or your protection, guaranteed. Your maintenance, guaranteed. To be given the ability of accepting that which is favorable, Krishna will do it. Guru will bless. Guaranteed. Giving up that which is unfavorable, the detachment, like the example is given in the 11th canto, Bhakti Paresha Anubhavo Viriktir Anyatra Cha, that the detachment one experiences by rendering devotional service, it's like taking foodstuff, a hungry man taking foodstuff, and as he continues to eat, slowly but surely becomes disinterested in the food. And while a hungry man is absorbed in eating sumptuous food, he's not interested in doing anything else. Don't bother me. Do you have another Malpore, please? It just simply focused on the act of eating. But with that eating, one becomes detached and satiated. I'm full. No, I can't eat another bite. Thank you. But it's not like that in devotional service. The similarity is that we become disinterested in everything else and become more increasingly attached to Krishna and desirous of pleasing, serving Krishna, but we never become satiated in that service. Pure devotional service means we increasingly desire to reawaken our love for Krishna, to increase our service to Krishna, to increase the absorption in the hearing, chanting, and remembering of Krishna. So that's the way all mundane analogies are. They have good points and dissimilarities also. But it covers all bases when you have firm faith and you engage in the service of Guru and Krishna. This aspect of short lives, Prabhupada talks about, it's caused by overeating, over-sense gratification, over-dependence on another's mercy, and artificial standards of living which sap the very vitality of human energy. Srila Prabhupada, in teaching us how to live as devotees, he says that if you simply honor vegetarian food offered to Krishna, if you get your exercise in chanting, dancing, and service to Krishna, and you live a sattvic Brahminical life, then guaranteed one can live a healthy life. That's the process. They're positive activities in service to Krishna. You don't have to go outside the purview of devotional service. And I can't help but think artificial standards of living. Chatur and I were discussing this point. And it's not just that, as Prabhupada would say, previously people brushed their teeth with a twig. They didn't need a toothbrush. They certainly didn't need an electric toothbrush. And now I saw on the internet, they have something that does it with laser vibrations or something. You just put it in and there's like this light that, I don't know how it works. Prabhupada says, you don't need that. Or to shave, a man simply needs a sharp, straight-edge razor. It'll do the trick and it'll last you an entire lifetime. Sharpen it every once in a while. You don't need the disposable razors. You certainly don't need the electric razor. And Prabhupada just poked holes in what this contemporary civilization is offering as sense gratification, making life easier. Washing machine, dishwasher, automobile service, as we heard yesterday. All these things are worse than the problems. It's the complication of life which is meant to be simple and sublime in the human form. So this artificial standard also, generally the polarity, the duality you would think would be real. But you can also say natural. Artificial, synthetic versus natural. And with folded hands, I'll say that also applies in medical science. The reason why things are flipped into synthetic pharmaceuticals is because that's where the profit lies. It doesn't improve the healing techniques of herbs that those synthesization of medicine comes from. It doesn't. It's only in the last 120 years or so that this has been a program. That's called contemporary civilization. And the side effects are frightening often. I don't watch TV, but when I used to, I always muted the commercials. But if you wanted to have fun when the medicinal commercials came on, half of the commercial was about the small print that you probably wouldn't read or the doctor doesn't tell you about when he offers you the medicine. Oh, by the way, this may cause kidney failure. It may cause, the list is just because it's not natural. It's artificial. So anyway, I don't have to go too long in that. The point is what distracts us from hearing. short life, unhealthy, quarrelsome. Man, is this an age of quarrel, a godless atmosphere. Prabhupada said when he was writing the purport to this verse, now we have this fight between China and India over land that's hardly inhabitable. I've seen videos of what it's a rocky, snow-filled border. It's useless. But they're up there, shooting guns sometimes. I saw a video where they actually wrestled. They were face to face, and they started wrestling, and hey, break it up, It's just like, for what? And Prabhupada said previously, for centuries, no problem. The border's there. We know it's there somewhere. And he said because basically a godly atmosphere prevailed. And he went so far as to say the leaders were trying to help people become God conscious or stay God conscious. Man, have times changed in 50 years of that purport having been written. Now the leaders, on the whole, the greatest majority, are signed up for the program of taking us away from God's service. I mean, you know what the latest is? Because we're a secular society, totally screwed up the way they've twisted the definition. It just means the ruler should encourage everyone to pick one and do it. But they say we won't get involved. So if you can say a prayer to God in school, what's now has been passed in the courts and whatever? They're handing out coloring books to elementary schools about the satanic worship of Satan. That's a fact in Florida. Well, if you worship God, you got to let us propagate worship of Satan. I mean, ignorance upside down, doing everything that's wrong. Not just sometimes wrong. No, they're pushing wrong, because that's what they believe in. It's a horrible age. What is it? Kaler dosha nidhe rajan. It's an ocean of faults. But thank you. But hearing makes that tumultuous ocean calm, placid, and easily traversed. So who do we hear from? We hear from the pure devotees who are connected with the disciplic succession. There's a shloka by Chanaka Pandit who says you should take nectar from a poisonous source, gold out of stool, a chaste and qualified wife from an unknown family, and knowledge from a learned man, even if he's from the lowest of caste. Prabhupada repeated that. But it's also balanced with Sanatana Goswami saying, don't take Achyuta Katha, teachings on devotional service of the glories of the Lord, from a non-devotee. It's poisonous. It's like drinking milk that a serpent has drank from, that its poison has been mixed in with. So if one is swan-like, he can hear, truth. He can see Krishna in everywhere, in everyone and everything, even in the nonsense. He can pull out. Prabhupada, talking to Shyamasundar, he listened to all the different philosophers throughout the ages, modern history, and he could pull out what was good, apply it to Krishna, and what was bad, leave it aside. But for a beginner, we can't do that. The effect of the poison spoils the whole thing. That's why Prabhupada in the beginning, when we were very neophyte, said, don't listen to anyone but me, not even my godbrothers. If you hear the slightest little difference in glorification or application, emphasis in devotional service, it'll confuse you, bewilder you. So in the beginning, who we hear from, it's so important. Throughout it all, pure devotees want to hear from pure devotees. What is it? Madchita, Madgata Prana, Bodhiyastan. Have I got it right here? Bodhiyastan Paraspara. Katayantas chamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. Thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. When Lord Nityananda met with Madhavinda Puri and vice versa, they were so excited to come in contact with another lover of Krishna, another pure devotee. They embraced and they fell down unconscious, and they remained unconscious in that embrace for hours and hours. I think it was 6 to 8 hours, something like that. Who was the other one? Embraced for 2 or 3 hours. Yeah, Jagannath Das Babaji, when he met one of his associates who didn't live in Vrindavan. He was traveling to Mayapur, and he stopped. Bhagavan Das Babaji or Madhusudana Das Babaji, I don't remember his name, and I'm sorry I don't. A little homework if you're interested. But when they met each other, they embraced, and they were unconscious in that embrace on the ground, rolling for 2 or 3 hours. Their servants didn't say, hey, break it up here, break it up. They didn't hey, what about me? I'm here. No, they assisted the service, the mood of their spiritual masters. For Lord Chaitanya, sometimes they would get involved because in his ecstasy, he would look lifeless, as if there was no breath, or his limbs would sink into his body like a tortoise, or disjointed and become super long, just hanging by a thread, it looked like, his limbs. They started chanting very sincerely, please come back, please come back. And sometimes he'd say, why'd you bring me back? So those who are associating with pure devotees, they simply talk about Krishna and hear about Krishna and how to spread Krishna consciousness. And they feel such ecstasy doing so. And if they can't have the association of such pure devotees, then they hear and chant on their own. But that's why Srila Prabhupada created the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to give us the opportunity to hear the pure message from pure souls. So how to hear, from whom, in what mood? We've already said the faithfulness. I'm going to repeat it. Does anybody remember the 3 definitions? Not Dravida, but Shushu or Shushu beer. Do you remember what the 3 were? Huh? Reverence. That was the second one. No, that was the first one mentioned. Reverence. I want you to hear with reverence. No, but that's a synonym. Obedience was the second one, and the third one was service. This is how to hear. You don't just in one ear and out the other, or not even in the ear because I've fallen asleep, or the speaker wasn't animated enough, or it just, I've heard it all. Same old. But we try to serve the message, and then it leads to chanting. And it's interesting because hearing is the foundation, it's the beginning. It's actually part of Diksha. I mean, Lord Chaitanya said when one takes Diksha, then immediately transcendental knowledge is revealed within the heart of the sincere disciple, and the Lord, Krishna, accepts that devotee to be non-different from himself. He's on the spiritual transcendental platform. Well, obviously, for most of us, that isn't the case. So real Diksha is when transcendental knowledge is revealed within the heart. Simultaneously, sins are purified and eliminated. That's what Diksha means. And when that platform is there, then one can render. One's qualified to render devotional service to the Lord. So you don't, it's by that hearing. So it's the foundation of everything. And hearing means chanting. Now to chant, to repeat, you have to be remembering also, right? Or you couldn't repeat it. So if you're attentively hearing, just like you remembered one of the 3 aspects of what is the definition of attentive hearing, you remembered. But Srila Prabhupada in the purport of remembering specifically starts focusing on the individual mellow or relationship attraction of the devotee to a relationship, a mellow and devotional service. And he gives 5 stages to remembering. And it's serious. It's not like we usually think, just I memorized that. That's Shravan, that's Smarnam. It's the beginning. We can't chant unless we have that aspect of memory down. But of chanting, that's what hearing leads to. And Lord Chaitanya said to Sanatana Goswami and Haridas Thakur, the 9 processes of devotional service, the most important is to always chant the holy name of the Lord. If one does so, avoiding the 10 kinds of offenses, one very easily obtains the most valuable love of Godhead. Same thing, very soon becomes eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Now the 10th offense in chanting Hare Krishna is not have complete faith in the chanting of Hare Krishna and to maintain material attachments even after hearing so many instructions on this matter. So if we still have material attachments, then what does that mean about our hearing of the message of the Guru and the Bhagavatam? We're lacking. It's a gradual process, but for our progressive desire to grow, to surrender more, it's a pinprick that we have to hear better. We have to apply better. We have to become more surrendered. And once the offenses are gone, like if you offend a devotee, what do? What's the recommended way of becoming free of the offense? Obeisances, service to whom? To the person you offended. And Srila Prabhupada, in discussing the 10 offenses, he said, actually there is no other remedy. There is no alternative. When you've created offenses in the holy name, what do? You can't do anything else. You have to approach the holy names, Krishna in his names, and continue glorifying him in the proper mood, meek and humble. We know Trinadapi Sunichena. Humble means not proud or believing that we're important. Meek, quiet, gentle, mild, soft-hearted, tender-hearted. Lord Chaitanya told Sanatana and Haridas that those who are meek and humble, they capture me. We heard a verse glorifying that type of aspect of bhakti in this morning's announcements, that one who gives up all desire for profit and simply serves for the pleasure of the Lord, the Lord becomes purchased and controlled, and likewise the devotee is completely under the control of the Lord. So the chanting, that's the key. That's the Yuga Dharma. That's that, what is it? Asti, Yeko, Mahadgunan. It's the great one good quality. Mukta Sangam, Param Vajait. What? Krishna Kirtan. Kirtan Eva Krishnasya. Chanting Hare Krishna. That's it. That's everything, and everything's built around it. You have to hear the names from the pure devotees, because those will be the pure name of Krishna. That will be Krishna entering into the ear. And we have to serve to the best of our abilities, that sound vibration, through hearing and chanting. That's all it takes, hearing and chanting. And every activity of service that we do, this engaging in the culture of Krishna consciousness, that means remembering Krishna while simultaneously serving. So in all processes, the other 8, the chanting should accompany them all. The Acharyas, Jiva Goswami says. And if time would allow, there's a nice purport to the verse I just read from the CC, Antya-lila 471, if you're interested. But Srila Prabhupada gave us the advice that before chanting, like, let me ask you a question. I was just curious. How many devotees, upon waking up, before they get to Mangal Arti, turn on their phone and look at it? I'm just curious. Do you mind being honest with me? Does anybody here? One? You got one honest Brahmin in the group. Don't. That's a wonderful thing. If you're looking up such verses as O Harinam, the tips of the toes of your lotus feet are constantly being worshipped by the glowing radiance emanating from the string of gems known as the Upanishads, the crown jewel of all the Vedas. You, the holy name, are eternally adored by liberated souls such as Narada and Shukadev. O Harinam, I take complete shelter of you. Or Sanatan Goswami saying, all glories to the all blissful holy name of Sri Krishna, which causes the devotee to give up all conventional religious duties. Now, is that properly stated? Which causes us to give up all conventional religious duties, meditation and worship, when somehow or other, uttered even once by a living entity, the holy name awards him liberation. The holy name of Krishna is the highest nectar. It's my very life and my only treasure. Or the second canto, Shukadev Goswami saying, O king, constant chanting the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. Yamaraj says, devotional service beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in human society. To meditate on these types of glorification is good for putting the mind in the proper mood for chanting and hearing the holy names. And I imagine more in the audience would raise their hand about turning on the phone because it's addictive. It is a pernicious instrument. Pernicious means, Prabhu? Poisonous instrument of Kali Yuga. The nectar's in here, but there's lots of poison surrounding it. And, we just have to be careful. So, hearing, chanting, remembering, engaging with faith in the culture of Krishna consciousness, if we do it in the proper mood, proper way as taught by the pure devotees, then we will get what they are offering. We will become like they are, the surrendered eternal servants of Krishna. So, are there any questions or comments on anything discussed today? Can somebody hand him the microphone, please? I insist.
Hare Krishna. This morning I was reviewing the what is it called? The Kevalashtaka. You know, the Kevalashtaka poem about the holy name, because you were chanting some favorite verses there at the end about the holy name. And one of those, there's 8. I don't know if you know this, but they found out who wrote it, and because for a long time it was said to be anonymous. But it was written by Sri Nilakanta Goswami, who was a close associate of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Oh. And the way we found it at Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one of his old harmonists, he praises this. And it turns out that those 8 verses, Kevalashtaka, are 8. I don't know if Bhaktivinoda Thakur... 8, they're 8 of 100. He wrote 100 verses with that way, the same line. Anyway, it says one that always stands out of those 8, and that it's pertinent to what you were talking about. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be.
Thank you. That's pure nectar. I have a question for you. Don't mind if anybody else has one. But it said that Rupa Goswami wrote 100,000 verses in compiling his books. Jiva goes... Stick with me, Jiva.
100,000 for...
And his disciple, Jiva Goswami, he is said to have written 400,000, 4 times what his spiritual master did. So you see the empowerment. No. It's not that the disciple has to remain in his services or even realizations. That is for those who are the guru being less than a Paramahamsa, but they can do more, the disciple. So we could count the verses, I imagine, that are in Prabhupada's books. But when the Goswamis write, like their purports are counted as verses. Have you ever considered how many verses, how we would conceptualize or categorize how many verses in that way Srila Prabhupada offered us?
Well, let me preface that with a, I don't want to call it a pastime, but a little incident that happened when we finished the Bhagavatam in Miami. Because for years we'd heard, and it's right in the Bhagavatam, there's 18,000 verses, right? And devotees were writing in. They were upset because when we finished the whole Bhagavatam, 12th canto, many of them counted up the verses, which are easy enough to do. You can see the number of verses in each chapter, and it was nowhere near 18,000. It was more like 13,000. What did you do? You left out some. No, I mean, there was no implication. Do you remember that?
How many were there?
Well, here, let me finish.
Thank you.
Because what is mentioned there is I think the word is used in the Garuda Purana or another Purana about the Bhagavatam, and this is the standard, and this what's mentioned about Rupa Goswami. There's so many thousands of granthas, which is commonly translated as verses. But a grantha literally means a verse which is the size of the standard Bhagavad Gita verse, the Anushtup, 32 syllables.
Yeah.
32 syllables, that's a grantha. So now, for instance, Rupa Goswami, some of the verses you read there were by him, they're longer than that. You see, they're longer than that.
Yeah.
And he, my friend Alex here, we memorized a couple of verses, from Rupa Goswami. They go on for like 12 lines, and there's probably about 8 or 9 granthas in there. So when so if you try to count like a big verse, like the first verse Bhagavatam, that's 4 or 5 granthas. Right? There's 4 granthas, I think, there, or more. So that's why it came down. And then when you get to the 5th canto, you got these big prose passages. You got to divide it all up into 32 syllables. You see what I'm saying? So it may have a one number in the book, but you can't count that as one verse. You see what I'm saying? So in that way, realistic. I mean, it's still an amazing amount. 100,000 versus the size of the Bhagavad Gita verses is still a tremendous amount. But it's not. But we should understand how that works.
Okay.
And as far as Prabhupada's books go, my goodness, those purports. I mean, I don't know how many 100 granthas, or if you want to do the eight.
Each concept in the purport probably, or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you can divide English words into syllables also if you want to be strict about it. And he probably wrote more than Jiva Goswami in that regard.
I thought that could be the case.
Yeah.
Empowered by the Goswamis.
Yeah. And there's such a large volume of literature Prabhupada left us. And then you take all the the transcripts of the lectures and everything. It's a tremendous.
Ananta, this verse from the 5th chapter. What's that, Prabhu? I'll repeat it. Yeah, well, Dravida Prabhu said it's probably more. So the famous verse, Tadbhag Vishargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhatavayatapi Namami Anantasya Yasho Kirtani Yai Shinvanti Gayanti Grananti Sadhava. That literature which is full of the descriptions of the transcendental glories, name, form, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Lord. Bhakti Siddhanta said we could put out a newspaper every what? Second. Yeah. Use the mic if you want to compliment that.
One gentleman, when he was putting out, what was it called? The Nadia Prakash? Yeah. And he was publishing daily, And so, how can you put out, about something about Krishna every day? Don't you run out of material? So, no, we could put out one every second and we wouldn't even scratch the surface, that.
Haribo.
He said, the problem is we'll have no readers if we put it out every second.
Oh, yeah, please.
significance for two reasons. One is Prabhupada chose that verse and put it in his preface. Now, the preface is where you explain why you wrote the book and what impelled you to write the book, And he was encouraged about by that verse, especially because it says, even if imperfectly composed, because he's writing in a foreign language, and there's a passage there where he says, well, I know there's going to be imperfections, but still, because he's going to do. So that's a seminal verse for us, And I discovered when we finally finished the Bhagavatam, there's a series of 8 verses spoken by Sutta Goswami, basically his last instruction there at the 12th canto before he gets up and leaves, which happens to be 8 verses, so I called it the Krishna Katashtika, because it's all about the glories of Krishna Katha, which is the subject here. And one of the actually 3 verses from that instruction, this is from Narada's instruction to Vyasadeva in the 5th chapter, 1st canto. This Tadbhag Visargo. It's the second verse of the, after the famous crow
pilgrimage.
So the one pilgrimage of crows verse is there. This verse is there, and the one following it, it's repeated there in in this Krishna Katashika at the very end of the Bhagavatam. And Vishwanath Chakravarti, he gets into that and he says, these verses bracket the Bhagavatam, beginning and end, because in 1st canto, chapter 5, all the way to the end. So they're very significant, so they're worth studying. And Prabhupada would constantly quote, especially those 2, the Pilgrimage of Crows and Tadbhag Visarga. So it's...
Can I repeat that third that you're saying caps off?
Yeah.
Go ahead if you want, if you know it.
Naishkamimapyachidabhavavaritam nashobhate jnanamalanghananjanam krutokpanakshashwadabandham nishade nayarpitam karmayanapyanuttamam. I think it's the last line. Maybe I...
Nacharpitam.
Nacharpitam karmayanapyanuttamam. Which is translated.
Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, you realize you're not the body. Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature if they're not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? So that's one of the last verses in the Bhagavatam.
Yes, that one is also included at the end. Those 3 are very important to study.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ke, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ke, Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ke.